Next lot, student Zoe Mitchell. The ballroom froze. Forks stopped mid-air, and Zoe felt her stomach drop as if the floor had vanished beneath her feet. She didn't understand at first. She was behind the university's support table, handing out brochures about the charity auction, when she heard her name announced by the auctioneer with far too much enthusiasm to be a mistake. $5,000! Someone shouted from the back. Zoe's eyes widened as she looked up at the screen. There it was, her student ID photo, the worst one ever, projected in giant size, with the caption, "Lunch with Zoe Mitchell, lot number 23. She swallowed hard. What? Before she could run to the stage and clarify the error, the gavel came down with a bang. Sold! The crowd applauded, laughter echoed, and then she saw him. In the front row, in a tailored linen suit with a smile somewhere between cynical and bored, was Jordan Long, the richest and most arrogant man in the city. He stood up, raising his wineglass in a toast. To investing in local intelligence, ladies and gentlemen. Zoe wanted to dig a hole and disappear, but what she didn't know was that this auction would change everything. Not just her life, but also the heart of a man who thought he could buy anything, even love. 20 minutes before disaster struck, Zoe Mitchell was convinced this would be just another boring night of volunteer work. She had agreed to help organize the university's charity auction because, well, it was impossible to say no to the program coordinator when she showed up with that puppy dog look asking for just a little help. Zoe, you're so efficient. Efficient. That word had haunted her since she started her degree in agricultural business management. As if being efficient was a consolation prize for someone who couldn't be glamorous, connected, or the daughter of a ranch owner. Zoe was the daughter of Robert and Linda Mitchell, owners of a small farm that barely qualified as such, where they grew vegetables and raised chickens with saints' names, courtesy of her mother, who talked to St. Jude while kneading bread dough. But that night, while distributing brochures and smiling politely at businessmen in shirts too tight for comfort, Zoe had no idea her life was about to be turned upside down. The Valley Springs Hotel was packed, tables decorated with sunflower arrangements and candles. Agribusiness entrepreneurs, ranchers, local politicians, all dressed as if attending a magazine-worthy wedding. The charity auction was a tradition. University students offered themselves for lunches with local business people, and the money raised went directly to the scholarship fund. Zoe had thought the idea was a bit strange from the start. Like, who in their right mind would pay to have lunch with a student? But anyway, it was for a good cause, and she wasn't participating. She was just helping, distributing folders, being efficient, until she heard her name. At first, she thought she'd misheard, but then the auctioneer repeated it now with even more enthusiasm. Lot number 23, lunch with the brilliant student Zoe Mitchell, agricultural business management major, specialist in small farm management. Specialist? She'd barely finished her third semester. Zoe turned to the coordination table, looking for some sign that this was a mistake. But the coordinator, Professor Anderson, was busy talking to a gentleman in a cowboy hat, completely oblivious to the chaos about to unfold. That's when the photo appeared on the screen. That cursed photo. The ID card one. The one where her hair was pulled back carelessly, no makeup, with an expression like she'd just woken up, giant size, for 300 people to see. Zoe felt her face catch fire. "This is a mistake!" she shouted, but her voice was lost in the buzz of the room. And then came the bid. $5,000. The voice came from the back of the room, deep, firm, with a hint of arrogance that Zoe would recognize anywhere. She turned slowly, already knowing who it was. Jordan Long. He was leaning back in his chair, legs crossed with irritating elegance, holding a glass of red wine as if he were at an art auction in Paris, not a university event in the middle of California. The light linen suit contrasted with his slightly tanned skin, and his dark hair, impeccably styled back, gave him the air of a primetime TV heartthrob, the kind everyone loves to hate. Zoe knew him by sight. Everyone in Sacramento knew Jordan Long. He was the owner of one of the largest premium cattle ranches in the region, heir to an empire built by his father, Dr. William Long, who had died 3 years earlier, leaving his son not just land, but also a reputation as a hard man, ruthless in business. Jordan had a reputation for being even worse: cold, calculating, seductive when he wanted to be, but emotionally unavailable. And now he was there, smiling like someone who'd just won a bet. $5,000, the auctioneer repeated, excited. Any other bids? Silence. 5,000 once, 5,000 twice. Zoe tried to move, but her feet seemed glued to the floor. Sold! The gavel came down. The crowd erupted in applause. Some people laughed, others whispered, and Jordan Long stood up, raising his glass as if making a toast. To investing in local intelligence, ladies and gentlemen. The phrase landed like a bomb. Some people laughed loudly, others exchanged glances. And Zoe, well, Zoe wanted to die, investing in local intelligence, as if she were a charity project, a lost cause that needed sponsorship. She clenched her fists, feeling rage rise like volcanic lava. But before she could do anything, scream, run, or throw a sunflower arrangement at his head, a hand landed on her shoulder. It was Chelsea Parker, cousin of Blake Parker and one of the event organizers, blonde in high heels, with a smile that seemed painted on her face. "Zoe, honey, congratulations," she said, with a sweetness so fake it could cause diabetes. $5,000! You must be so happy. Imagine the scholarship this will provide for someone in need. Someone in need. As if Zoe wasn't. "This was a mistake, Chelsea," Zoe said through gritted teeth. "I didn't sign up." Chelsea blinked, feigning surprise. "Oh no, how strange. But your name was on the list. Maybe you forgot." "I didn't forget. I didn't sign up." Chelsea shrugged, still smiling. "Well, anyway, it's done now. And $5,000 is a lot, Zoe. It would be selfish to refuse, don't you think?" Zoe opened her mouth to respond, but Chelsea had already turned away, waving to someone across the room. That's when Jordan appeared. He approached with the calm of someone who has all the time in the world, hands in his pockets, that cynical smile still on his lips. "Zoe Mitchell," he said, as if testing the name. "Pleasure. Jordan Long." "I know who you are," Zoe responded dryly. He raised an eyebrow, amused. "Great. Then you already know I don't usually make bad investments." Investments. That word again. Zoe crossed her arms, staring at him with all the intensity she could muster. "This was a mistake. I didn't sign up for this auction." "Well, you should have," Jordan said, tilting his head. "Apparently it's worth it." He said it with such irritating naturalness that Zoe felt like throwing the brochure she was still holding in his face. "Look, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I'm not merchandise." Jordan smiled even more. "Of course not. You're an investment." That was it. Zoe felt the last thread of patience snap. "You know what you are?" Arrogant. He let out a low laugh, as if that were the greatest compliment he'd ever received. "And you, Zoe Mitchell, are the first person who has the courage to tell me that to my face." He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "I think I made an excellent deal." And before she could respond, he turned and walked back to his table, leaving Zoe alone in the middle of the room, with 300 pairs of eyes glued to her, and one certainty hammering in her head. That man was going to be a problem, a huge problem. The lunch was scheduled for the following Tuesday noon at the most expensive restaurant in Sacramento, the kind of place where people ordered wines with unpronounceable names and paid $50 for a salad that barely filled the plate. Zoe spent the entire weekend trying to find a way to cancel, but every time she thought about calling the coordinator, she remembered Chelsea's phrase, "It would be selfish to refuse, don't you think?" $5,000. That was almost a semester of college. It was the dream of some student who, like her, depended on scholarships to continue studying. How could she throw that away out of pride? So on Tuesday, Zoe got dressed. She wore her only dress pants, a simple white blouse, and borrowed a handbag from Aunt Diane, who of course insisted on giving her opinion. "Look, Zoe, this Jordan Long guy is single, right? Rich, handsome. Who knows? Maybe something could happen." "Aunt Diane, for God's sake. I'm just saying, sweetie. Opportunities like this don't fall from the sky every day. You could at least fix your hair, put on some lipstick." Zoe rolled her eyes and left before her aunt started planning the wedding. The restaurant was downtown, in a renovated old building with exposed brick walls and iron chandeliers. When Zoe entered, the maitre d' greeted her with a polite smile and led her to a table at the back near the window. And there he was, Jordan Long, in a white dress shirt with sleeves rolled up to his elbows, no tie, his hair impeccable as always. He was looking at his phone, but raised his eyes as soon as Zoe approached, and smiled. That irritating, arrogant smile that seemed to say, "I know exactly what I'm doing and you don't stand a chance." "Punctual," he said, standing to pull out her chair. "I like that." Zoe sat without saying anything. Jordan returned to his seat, still smiling. "Nervous? Why?" Zoe asked dryly. "It's just lunch." "Yeah, a $5,000 lunch." She gripped her purse strap, trying not to let irritation overflow. "Look, I'm only here because the money goes to an important cause. But I want to make it clear this doesn't mean anything. I'm not your friend, not your employee, and definitely not your investment." Jordan tilted his head, amused. "Understood. So what are you?" "A person who's here, out of obligation." "Ah, so we're both in the same boat." Zoe frowned. "What do you mean?" "I'm also here out of obligation. My mother called me 3 times this week demanding social participation. Apparently, being locked up on the ranch managing cattle doesn't count as a productive life." Despite everything, Zoe almost smiled. Almost. The waiter appeared, and Jordan ordered something in French that Zoe didn't understand. She, in turn, ordered a steak with rice and beans, the simplest thing on the menu, but also the most expensive thing she'd ever eaten in her life. When the waiter left, Jordan leaned his elbows on the table, staring at her with those dark eyes that seemed to see through people. "So Zoe Mitchell, agricultural business management, 3rd semester, specialist in small farm management." He paused. "Is all that true, or was it marketing?" "It's true," she responded, raising her chin. "My parents have a small farm, vegetable cultivation. I grew up watching my dad wake up at 4 in the morning to water the land, and my mom make jams to sell at the farmer's market. So yes, I know what small farm management is." Jordan nodded, as if processing the information. "Interesting. Why?" "Because most people I know in your field of study are children of big ranchers, people who've never actually put their hands in the dirt. But you," he smiled, "you're different." Zoe didn't know if that was a compliment or a provocation. Probably both. "And you?" she shot back. "Heir to an agribusiness empire, premium cattle breeder, 5,000 acres of land." She paused. "I imagine you've never actually worked a day in your life." Jordan let out a low laugh, as if she'd just told a joke. "Actually worked? You mean sweat in the sun, carry feed bags, clean stables?" "Yeah, exactly that." "Then you're right. I've never done any of that." Zoe felt a pang of satisfaction, but before she could respond, Jordan continued. "But I wake up at 5 every morning. I manage 300 employees. I make decisions that move millions of dollars. I travel to national auctions. I deal with crises, fraud, cattle diseases, market fluctuations." He leaned forward, staring at her intensely. "So yes, Zoe, I work, just in a way you probably wouldn't understand." The tension at the table was almost palpable. Zoe held his gaze, refusing to look away. "You're right," she said slowly. "I don't understand. Because real work, to me, is when you feel the weight of what you're doing. When you know that if you mess up, there's no safety net, no inheritance, no last name to protect you." Jordan was silent for a moment, and then, to Zoe's surprise, he smiled. But this time it was different. It wasn't arrogant. It was genuine. "Touché." The lunch continued. Between bites and sips of wine, which Jordan insisted on ordering despite Zoe refusing, they exchanged barbs, provocations, and strangely, some laughs. Jordan had a sharp sense of humor, the kind that cut like a blade, but he also knew how to listen. And Zoe, despite not wanting to admit it, was having fun. That's when Jordan made the proposal. "Have you ever thought about doing an internship?" Zoe blinked, confused. "Internship? At my ranch?" She dropped her fork. "Are you serious?" "Completely. You're smart, you have the courage to challenge me, and from what I can tell, you understand management. I could use someone like that on my team." Zoe crossed her arms, suspicious. "Why?" "Because you're different, and I like challenges." She didn't know whether to feel flattered or offended. "I'm not a challenge, Jordan." "No?" He smiled. "Then what are you?" Zoe hesitated. The truth was, she needed an internship. She needed experience. She needed something that would set her apart from other students when looking for a job, but accepting a proposal from Jordan Long, that seemed dangerous. "He'll think about it," she said finally. Jordan nodded, as if he already knew she would accept. "Great, you have until Friday." And so, between a tense lunch and an unexpected proposal, Zoe Mitchell began to realize that Jordan Long wasn't just a problem. He was a problem she couldn't stop thinking about. Zoe accepted the internship, not because she wanted to, she made that very clear to herself, but because refusing would be foolish. Jordan Long owned one of the largest ranches in the region. Having an experience like that on her resume was gold. And besides, she needed to prove to herself and to everyone that she wasn't just the farm girl. She was capable. She had value. But when she arrived at Long Valley Ranch for the first time, the following Monday at 7 a.m., Zoe realized she had underestimated the size of the challenge. The property was massive, 5,000 acres of green pasture, impeccable white fences, modern barns, and atop a hill, a house that looked straight out of an architecture magazine. Clean lines, glass, exposed concrete, with a deck overlooking the endless valley. It was the kind of place that screamed money, but with class. Zoe parked her old motorcycle near the administrative office and took off her helmet, adjusting her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She was dressed simply, jeans, boots, white t-shirt, no frills. After all, it was a ranch, not a fashion show. That's when she saw Jordan. He was near the corral, talking to an older man, probably the foreman. Jordan wore a long-sleeved shirt rolled up to his elbows, faded jeans and leather boots. His hair was slightly messy, as if he'd just come off a ride. And Zoe had to admit, very much against her will, that he looked absurdly good that way. Jordan saw her and waved, saying goodbye to the man before walking over to her. "Punctual again," he said, smiling. "You're surprising me, Mitchell." Mitchell. He'd started calling her by her last name as if it was some kind of intimate nickname. Zoe didn't know if she liked it or hated it. "I don't usually run late," she responded. "Great, because we start early here." Jordan pointed to the office. "Come on, he'll introduce you to the team." The administrative office was surprisingly organized. Modern computers, well-labeled files, a whiteboard full of charts and goals. And there was the team, 3 people, all older than Zoe, all looking at her with a mixture of curiosity and distrust. Jordan made the introductions. "Everyone, this is Zoe Mitchell. She'll be interning here for a while, helping with management. And Zoe, this is Marcus." He pointed to the older man with grey hair and a serious look. "He's managed the ranch for over 20 years. Knows this place better than I do." Marcus nodded politely, but didn't smile. "This is Rachel, in charge of finances. And this is Tom, who handles logistics." Rachel was a woman in her 40s, short hair, glasses. She greeted Zoe with a nod. Tom, a robust man in his 50s, just grunted something that could have been a hi. Zoe felt the weight of their stares. It was obvious no one there was happy about her presence, and she couldn't blame them. After all, she was just an intern, a 23-year-old girl who, in their view, probably knew nothing. "Zoe will start by reviewing expense reports," Jordan said. I want her to get an overview of how things work here. Marcus frowned. Expense reports? That's work for an intern? It's work for whoever I decide, Jordan responded sharply. Marcus didn't retort, but the discontent was clear on his face. Jordan turned to Zoe. Any questions? None, she said, raising her chin. Great. If you need anything, just find me. My office is there. He pointed to a glass door in the back. And Zoe? Yes. Welcome to Long Valley. He smiled, and for the first time, Zoe thought that maybe, just maybe, this could work out. In the first few days, Zoe worked in silence. She reviewed spreadsheets, checked invoices, organized reports, and the more she looked, the more she noticed something strange. There were expenses that didn't make sense, recurring purchases of supplies in absurd quantities, always from the same supplier, payments for general services, with no breakdown. Zoe noted everything. On Friday, she knocked on Jordan's office door. Come in, he said, without taking his eyes off the computer. Zoe entered, holding a folder full of papers. I need to talk to you. Jordan looked up, raising an eyebrow. Sounds serious. It is. She placed the folder on the desk. I found some inconsistencies in the expense reports. Jordan leaned forward, interested. What kind of inconsistencies? Zoe opened the folder, showing the spreadsheet she had marked. These purchases here, veterinary supplies, always from the same supplier, always in quantities much larger than necessary. And the payments are made in cash, without detailed invoices. Jordan took the papers, analyzing them carefully. And you think this is overbilling? Zoe said bluntly. Someone's embezzling money. Jordan was silent for a long moment, and then he sighed. Are you sure about this? I am. The numbers don't lie. He rubbed his face, tired. And do you have any idea who might be doing this? Zoe hesitated. The truth was she had a suspicion. But accusing someone without concrete proof was risky. I need to investigate more, but... She took a deep breath. The purchases are authorized by Marcus. Jordan closed his eyes. Marcus. I'm not saying it's him, but he's responsible for approving these expenses. Jordan was silent, and Zoe realized this was more complicated than it seemed. Marcus wasn't just an employee. He was practically family. He had worked with Jordan's father, had been a kind of mentor. Accusing him was delicate. Thank you, Zoe, Jordan said finally. I'll handle it. Are you sure? Because I can... I'll handle it, he repeated, more firmly. Zoe nodded and left the office, feeling a tightness in her chest. She had done the right thing. But why did it feel like she'd just opened Pandora's box? In the following days, tension at the ranch increased. Marcus began treating her coldly. Rachel and Tom avoided her. And Jordan, well, Jordan was different, more distant, more serious. Zoe tried to focus on work, but it was impossible to ignore the heavy atmosphere. Then one hot Thursday afternoon, Jordan called her again. I need you to come with me, he said. Where? Corral. We have a problem. Zoe followed him to the corral, where a group of ranch hands was gathered around a fallen bull. The animal was breathing with difficulty, tongue out, eyes glazed. What happened? Jordan asked. Don't know, boss, one of the hands responded. He was fine this morning. Suddenly he collapsed. Jordan knelt beside the bull, examining it, and then he saw it, foam at the mouth, tremors, classic symptoms of poisoning. Call the vet, Jordan ordered. Now, he stood up, his face set, and looked at Zoe. This wasn't an accident. What do you mean? Someone poisoned this bull. Zoe felt a chill down her spine. But why? Jordan didn't answer, but she saw something in his eyes. Anger and fear. Someone was sabotaging the ranch. And Zoe had the terrible feeling this had everything to do with what she had discovered. From that day on, everything changed at Long Valley Ranch. Jordan hired extra security, installed cameras at strategic points, and began personally reviewing every financial transaction. He was obsessed with finding out who was behind the sabotage. And Zoe, well, Zoe was in the middle of the hurricane. The vet confirmed. The bull had been poisoned with a substance that could only have been administered by someone inside. It wasn't an accident. It was intentional. Jordan gathered the entire team in the office. Marcus, Rachel, Tom, the ranch hands, everyone. And he made it clear, whoever was behind this would be discovered and would pay dearly. But things only got worse. The following week, 3 high-value cows died mysteriously. Important documents went missing. And then, the final blow, a video leaked online. It was the video from the auction, that cursed night. And in the video, edited maliciously, Jordan appeared laughing, raising his glass, saying, "To investing in local intelligence." But the cut made it seem like he was mocking, ridiculing, as if he'd bought Zoe for fun. The video went viral. Within 48 hours, it was in every group chat in the city. At the university, comments were cruel. "Zoe sold herself. She's chasing the rich guy. There must have been more than just lunch." Chelsea Parker, of course, was behind much of the venomous commentary, always with that smile of someone who has nothing to do with it. Zoe tried to ignore it, but it was impossible. Every time she entered the classroom, stares followed her. The whispers, the giggles, and the worst part, she couldn't talk to Jordan about it, because deep down, part of her wondered, did he really say that with disdain? Did he deep down see her as an investment? A bet? That's when everything fell apart completely. Zoe was in the ranch office reviewing more reports when she heard voices coming from Jordan's office. The door was ajar, and she recognized the voice immediately. Blake Parker. "So, Jordan, how's your investment in local intelligence going?" Blake said, laughing. "Already got the return you expected?" Zoe froze. "Blake, don't start," Jordan responded, irritated. "Oh, come on. You made the bet. $5,000 that you could win over the hardest girl at the auction. And look at that, you did it. She's here working for you, eating out of your hand." Blake let out a laugh. "Man, you're a genius. Zoe's world collapsed. Bet. He had made a bet. She wasn't an investment. She was a bet, a game, a joke between bored rich men." Zoe felt her legs go weak, hands trembling. Breath caught in her throat. She didn't wait to hear the rest. She grabbed her bag, left through the back door, got on her motorcycle and rode away, and didn't look back. Jordan tried calling 10, 20, 30 times. Zoe didn't answer. He sent messages. She blocked him. He showed up at her house. She didn't open the door. Linda, worried, tried to convince her to at least talk. "Zoe, honey, maybe he has an explanation." "There's no explanation, Mom," Zoe said, her eyes red from crying so much. "He made a bet. I was a bet. And I was stupid enough to believe he saw me as more than that. But he seemed to care about you so much. He liked winning, Mom. It's different." Kyle, her younger brother, tried to cheer her up. "Want me to go there and punch him, sis? I'm skinny, but I've got guts." Zoe almost smiled. Almost. Aunt Diane, of course, had the perfect solution. "Forget this Jordan girl. Let me introduce you to Derek, the city councilman. He's looking for a wife, has a nice car, and doesn't bet on anyone." Aunt Diane, for God's sake. Meanwhile, at Long Valley Ranch, Jordan was in free fall. Without Zoe, management returned to chaos. The inconsistencies she had identified worsened. Blake, taking advantage, spread more rumors that Zoe had forged the reports to harm him, that she was an opportunist, that she had approached him out of interest. And worse, Jordan discovered the truth about the sabotage. It wasn't Marcus, it was Blake. Blake had bribed one of the ranch hands to poison the cattle, make documents disappear, create chaos, all to destabilize Jordan. And it had worked. When Jordan confronted Blake, the response was cynical. "You got weak, Jordan. Since that girl showed up, you lost focus. I just showed you, and everyone, that you're nothing but a spoiled heir who lets himself be manipulated by any pretty face." Jordan almost went after him, but he held back, because he knew the only way to fix this wasn't with violence, it was with truth and courage. 3 weeks later, the National Agribusiness Fair took place, the biggest event in the sector in the Western region. Business people from across the country, million-dollar auctions, lectures, networking. Jordan had a presentation scheduled. He was going to talk about innovation in ranch management. but he changed his plans. Zoe was also there, not because of him, but because the university had invited her to present her sustainable management project for small producers, work she had started during her internship at Long Valley. It was her chance to show everyone she had value, that she wasn't the auction girl. She was Zoe Mitchell, competent agricultural business manager. She was backstage, nervous, going over the presentation when she heard his voice on the microphone. Jordan Long was on stage, and he wasn't talking about innovation, he was talking about her. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jordan began, his voice firm but loaded with emotion, "today I didn't come here to talk about cattle, management, or my ranch numbers. I came here to talk about a mistake I made and that I need to publicly correct." The auditorium fell silent. Zoe, backstage, felt her heart race. "A few weeks ago, I participated in a charity auction, and I did something I'm deeply ashamed of." Jordan took a deep breath. "I made a bet with friends, an idiotic, arrogant, sexist bet. I said I could win over the hardest girl at the auction, and I bid $5,000 for Zoe Mitchell." Murmurs echoed through the auditorium. "But what I didn't expect," Jordan continued, his voice lower now, "is that Zoe wasn't just a conquest. She is the smartest, most courageous, most dignified person I've ever met. She came to my ranch as an intern and taught me more about leadership, ethics, humanity than any course or mentor I've ever had." Zoe felt tears welling up. She discovered a corruption scheme that I, blinded by trust, had been ignoring for years. She reorganized management, she built relationships with employees, she made Long Valley a better place. And I treated her like a prize, like a trophy, and for that, I'm an idiot. Some people laughed nervously, others remained silent. "Zoe, if you're here," Jordan said, searching the audience, "I want you to know you weren't a bet. You never were. You're the best thing that ever happened in my life, and I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn it." He paused. "And to prove this isn't just talk, I want to announce something. Starting today, Long Valley Ranch will allocate 100 acres of land for a cooperative project for small producers, led by Zoe Mitchell. The goal is to offer young agricultural managers the opportunity to grow, learn, and have dignity, without having to submit to humiliating auctions." The audience erupted in applause. Zoe backstage couldn't move. Tears flowed freely down her face. Blake, sitting in the front row, was red with rage. Chelsea, next to him, looked petrified. Jordan left the stage and went straight backstage. Zoe was waiting for him. They stared at each other in silence for a long moment. "You're crazy," Zoe said finally, her voice trembling. "I know," Jordan responded. "You just humiliated yourself in front of the entire agribusiness sector." "I know. And you think that's going to fix everything?" Jordan took a step forward, eyes fixed on hers. "No, but it's a start." Zoe crossed her arms, trying to maintain composure. "And if I say I don't want to forgive you," Jordan smiled sadly, "then I'll learn to live with it. But I'll never stop believing you're the best thing that happened to me." Zoe felt her chest tighten, and then, against all logic, against all pride, she took a step forward and hugged him. Jordan wrapped his arms around her, burying his face in her hair, as if she were the only real thing in the world. "I love you," he whispered. And it wasn't a bet. It never was. Zoe closed her eyes, feeling tears fall. "I love you too, you idiot." And there, backstage at an agribusiness fair, amid the smell of earth and cattle, Zoe and Jordan understood something fundamental. Love can't be bought. It's earned every single day. After that day at the fair, Zoe and Jordan's lives changed completely. But it wasn't a fairy tale. It was work, it was effort, it was construction. Jordan kept his promise. 100 acres of Long Valley Ranch were allocated to the cooperative project. Zoe led the initiative, recruiting young agricultural business managers from the university and small producers from the region. The idea was simple but revolutionary. Unite academic knowledge with practical experience, creating a support network for those who wanted to grow in agribusiness without needing millions in the bank. The project gained national attention. Specialized magazines, websites, even an agribusiness TV channel did stories on the initiative. And Zoe, the girl who had been auctioned by mistake, was now recognized as one of the most promising young leaders in the sector. But not everything was smooth sailing. Blake Parker, furious with the public exposure Jordan gave him, tried to sue the ranch for defamation. But when Jordan's lawyers presented proof of the sabotage, including testimony from the ranch hand Blake had bribed, the case turned against him. Blake ended up being investigated for environmental crime, fraud, and attempted extortion. His reputation, once untouchable, plummeted. Chelsea, meanwhile, was expelled from the organizing committee of the university's charity events when they discovered she had manipulated the auction system to include Zoe's name without authorization. She tried to claim it was a technical error, but no one believed her, especially after compromising emails were found, showing she had done it on purpose, part of a plan to humiliate Zoe and keep Jordan away from inappropriate girls. Meanwhile, at Long Valley Ranch, things were also changing. Marcus, who had initially been removed due to suspicion of involvement in the overbilling, was exonerated. Investigations showed he was actually a victim. Blake had forged approvals using Marcus's digital signature. When Jordan discovered the truth, he publicly apologized to the old administrator, and Marcus, a man of few words, simply said, "You're your father's son, Jordan. But you're also better than him, and that's what matters." It was one of the few times Jordan cried. Patricia Long, Jordan's mother, also had to swallow her pride. She had spent years trying to push suitable suitors on her son, women from high society with important last names, fat bank accounts. But when she met Zoe, during a tense lunch at the ranch, Patricia realized something that surprised her. The girl wasn't afraid of her. "You think I'm not good enough for your son," Zoe said, looking Patricia in the eyes. "And maybe you're right. I don't have money. I don't have a famous last name. I don't have a closet full of designer clothes. But I have dignity, and I love Jordan. Not for what he has, but for who he is. And if that's not enough for you, then I'm sorry, but I'm not going to try to please you." Patricia was silent for a long moment, and then, for the first time in years, she smiled, a genuine smile. "You've got courage, girl. My husband would have hated you." She paused. "That's exactly why I think you're perfect for Jordan." From that day on, Patricia began treating Zoe with respect. It wasn't friendship yet, but it was the beginning of something. Meanwhile, at the Mitchell house, things were also lively. Aunt Diane had finally given up on arranging a marriage for Zoe, especially after Jordan showed up at the family's house, barefoot, holding a bouquet of sunflowers and asking permission to officially date her niece. Diane almost fainted. "Oh my God, Linda is even better looking in person." Linda, always practical, offered coffee and cornbread. And Robert, Zoe's father, sat with Jordan on the porch and had a frank conversation. "You hurt my daughter," Robert said, his voice calm but firm. "And I don't forget that easily." "I know," Jordan responded, "and I don't expect you to forget. But I promise I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of her." Robert was silent, evaluating the young man in front of him, and then he extended his hand. "You've got one chance, son. Don't waste it." Jordan shook his hand, relieved. Kyle, of course, was thrilled. "Dude, you have a real horse, like that runs and everything. Do you think I could learn to ride?" Jordan smiled. "Sure, whenever you want." And Buddy, the golden retriever mix, decided Jordan was officially approved, especially after he brought a premium bone as a gift. Months passed. The cooperative project grew. Zoe graduated with honors from the university, presenting as her capstone project a study on sustainable management and social inclusion in agribusiness based on the Long Valley experience. She received top marks and several job offers, but she didn't accept any because she already had a purpose. Jordan and Zoe decided to transform the cooperative into an NGO. With the support of investors Jordan brought in, and with Zoe's impeccable management, the initiative expanded to other states. In 2 years, more than 300 families of small producers benefited, and Zoe, at 25, became a national reference in sustainable rural management. Jordan, meanwhile, completely changed how he managed Long Valley Ranch. He implemented more transparent practices, hired a diverse team, and began investing in cutting-edge technology, but without losing the human touch. The ranch became a model of sustainability and social responsibility. And their relationship? Well, it wasn't perfect. They fought. Zoe was stubborn, and Jordan proud. She thought he made decisions too quickly without consulting. He thought she was too cautious. But they learned something fundamental. Loving isn't about agreeing all the time. It's about choosing every day to be by each other's side, even when it's difficult. It was on a Saturday afternoon, 2 years after the auction, that Jordan took Zoe horseback riding to the top of the ranch hill. The sun was setting, painting the valley orange and gold. They stopped near an old tree, and Jordan dismounted from his mare, Silk. "What's going on?" Zoe asked, curious. Jordan extended his hand, helping her down, and then he knelt. Zoe's heart stopped. "Zoe Mitchell," Jordan said, pulling a small box from his pocket. "2 years ago, I bought you at an auction for $5,000, and it was the best investment of my life." He smiled. "But today, I don't want to buy you. I don't want to win you over. I want to choose you every day for the rest of my life." Boygi, he opened the box, revealing a simple, delicate ring with a stone that sparkled like the valley at sunset. "Will you marry me?" Zoe felt tears streaming down. "You're an idiot," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "I know. And you think I'm going to say yes after a proposal like that?" Jordan raised an eyebrow, nervous for the first time. "Will you?" Zoe knelt in front of him, holding Jordan's face with both hands. "Yes, you idiot. Yes." And there, at the top of the hill, with the valley as witness and the sun setting behind them, they kissed, and understood that true love isn't auctioned off. It's built, with courage, truth, and the daily choice to be together. Epilogue. 6 months later, Long Valley Ranch was celebrating. Zoe and Jordan's wedding was the event of the year in Sacramento, but it wasn't ostentatious at all. On the contrary, it was simple, outdoors, in the most beautiful pasture on the ranch, with sunflowers decorating everything, a country music band playing, because Jordan insisted on honoring Zoe's roots, and homemade food prepared by Linda and her church friends. The guest list was eclectic, agribusiness entrepreneurs sharing tables with small producers from the cooperative, university professors chatting with ranch hands, Patricia Long in an elegant dress, laughing at Aunt Diane's jokes. And Buddy, the golden retriever mix, ran loose throughout the party, stealing appetizers and almost knocking over the cake. Kyle was responsible for livening up the ceremony with his improvised announcements. "And here comes the bride, everyone. Zoe Mitchell, the girl who was auctioned off and is now going to win everyone's hearts here." Jordan rolled his eyes but was smiling. The ceremony was emotional. Zoe entered arm in arm with her father, Robert, who was trying, unsuccessfully, to hold back tears. The dress was simple but beautiful, white, with delicate lace, flowing as if she had stepped out of a dream. Jordan, in a light suit, waited at the makeshift altar under a centuries-old tree, and when Zoe got close, he whispered, "You look beautiful. You too, you silly man." The officiant, a family friend, conducted the ceremony with humor and tenderness. And when it was time for vows, Zoe and Jordan wrote their own. Zoe went first. "Jordan Long, when I met you, I thought you were the most arrogant, most irritating, and most insufferable man I'd ever seen." Laughter echoed. "And I wasn't wrong." More laughter. "But you're also the most courageous, most generous, and most capable of change man I know. You taught me that love isn't about perfection. It's about choice. And I choose you. Today, tomorrow, and forever." Jordan wiped his eyes, moved. Then it was his turn. "Zoe Mitchell, you came into my life like a hurricane. You messed everything up, questioned everything, and made me realize I was living on autopilot without feeling anything real." He held her hands. "You taught me to love, to be better, to be human, and I promise, in front of everyone here, that I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be the man you deserve, even if I never quite get there." Zoe smiled, tears streaming. "You're already there, Jordan." And when the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," the party erupted in applause. The rest of the night was a mix of joy, dancing, good food, and lots of love. Linda cried the whole time. Aunt Diane danced with Marcus, who turned red with embarrassment. Kyle tried to impress the girls with his announcer skills, and Patricia Long, to everyone's surprise, danced a country song with Robert. But the funniest moment of the night was when it came time to officially inaugurate the cooperative headquarters, which was in a renovated barn on the ranch. Jordan and Zoe cut the ribbon together under applause. And when they opened the doors, Buddy ran in, barking excitedly, and knocked over the microphone that was set up for speeches. Everyone burst out laughing. Aunt Diane, always without a filter, whispered loudly to Linda, "See, Linda, if she'd married Derek the councilman, there'd be no ranch at all. Now we even have bulls named after country singers." Linda elbowed her, but was laughing. Jordan picked up Buddy, scratching the dog's ear. "Hez part of the team," Jordan said. "Director of Public Relations." Zoe shook her head, laughing. "You're impossible, and you love me anyway." Unfortunately, yes. They kissed under the applause and whistles of the guests. And when the night ended, Zoe and Jordan were alone on the house deck, looking at the valley illuminated by the moon. "Do you think we'll make it?" Zoe asked, resting her head on his shoulder. "Make what?" "All of this. The cooperative, the ranch, life, being happy." Jordan kissed the top of her head. "We already have, Zoe, because we're together, and as long as that's true, we can do anything." Zoe smiled. "You've gotten romantic, huh?" "Your fault." They were silent for a moment, just feeling each other's presence, and then Zoe said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For buying me at that auction." Jordan laughed. "I should thank you, because in the end, the one who got bought was me." And there, under the starry California sky, Zoe and Jordan understood that true love wasn't about who won over whom. It was about building, together, something no amount of money in the world could buy: a home, a life, a future, and above all, a story worth living. So did you enjoy this story? If you got emotional, laughed, or rooted for Zoe and Jordan's love, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and ring the bell. This way you'll help me bring incredible stories like this one to other people who, just like you, love a good romance, with emotion, humor, and that heartwarming ending. Your participation makes all the difference. See you in the next story.